Hey YouTube, I just finished up another project, some end tables to match that coffee table that I had made earlier. It's a very low cost project. The only thing I really bought was some 2x4s to make the legs out of. Everything else I kind of had hanging around the shop. It's a pretty easy project to make, really minimal shop tools involved here. So I thought it might be a good project to do a video on. So let me show you what I got and how I did it. I'm going to make the legs. I'm going to make tapered legs. And what I did was I went up to the lumberyard and I got some 2x4s that were fairly clear, no knots. Anytime you're trying to make a wood project, unless you're trying to really do something rustic or something that has that appearance, knots always cause you problems. You think that you're going to buy a board and it's going to have just a few knots and you can work around that, but if you can find some 2x4s like I did that are fairly clear, you'll be in much better shape than trying to work around knots. So let's get started cutting those tapers. Okay, to cut these tapered legs, I made a little jig here. Now, I know a lot of people make these fancy jigs, beautiful, but I'm not cutting tapered legs all the time, so I don't really need to invest that much time into it. And then my shop is cluttered up with a bunch of jigs that I would rarely use. And these are so easy to make, there's really no need to get that elaborate with it. Basically, I have a hinge down at this end, but you could just as easily nail or screw a little strip of plastic or something from a milk jug, whatever, that creates a hinge point. And then down in here, I've got this piece here that I can move up and down this rail and turn it to open and close it as I would need. One important feature is you've got to have a stop block back here so that when you're pushing the piece through, it hits up against there and the piece is not sliding. Typically, your taper starts below the skirt board. So I would come down, in this case, something like maybe 7.5 inches. And then at this end, I would come in 1 inch. Okay? And then I'm going to connect. Then I'll draw my line. And I'll kind of look at it and see if I like that, if that's enough angle. And then you do the same thing on the other side. Come down 7.5 inches. You're only going to taper 2 sides typically. Okay, now we've got our legs cut out, and now I've got the skirt board pieces all cut out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put the frame together. If this were going to be a heavy table, something that would be moved around a lot with weight on it, you'd have to really use a pretty strong joint. Ideally some type of mortise tendon joint. This is just going to be a little small end table. I'm going to put this together with a combination of pocket screws and braces on the inside, and I think that'll be sufficient. Now we're ready to pocket hole this together. And one of the things you got to be careful of is that you don't lose which 2 sides are the straight non-tapered side. So what I've done is I put a little X here so I don't get confused. It's really hard when you're looking at it from here to tell which one, and if you get it turned around going the wrong way, it'll mess you up. So I got to think my X gets one, and then another piece will be here, and this will create my corner. I want this to sit back a little bit. I don't want it to be all the way flush out front like that. I want it to sit back. I want to create a little shoulder there. And the way I do that I just got a little scrap of this here that will lift this up, so it'll keep it consistent. Okay, now I'm going to reinforce this corner. I've cut these blocks, put some pocket holes so that I can attach the top as well. Okay, now we're ready to move on to the tops. I'm going to make the tops in the same way that I made the tops on the coffee table. And that is a solid piece of a sheet of plywood with a solid wood edge trim around the outside perimeter. Now we're going to make that piece of solid trim on the router, and then we'll cut it to miter and fit right around here. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, now we've got the top pieces of the plywood cut. Now we just got to make a piece of trim to go around the outside of that. So I'm going to cut down some wood, run it through the router, and put a profile on it, and then we'll attach it to that plywood and see what we got. Now that I've got all these perfectly mitered and fitted, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my marks for my biscuit joiner. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label each piece so I know which side it goes to. We're not going to bother putting drawers in this because it's so small it wouldn't really hold too much. But I thought it might make a nice detail to just put a false drawer front on there with a little knob. So I just routed a little round over, 3/8 inch round over on the edge. And then I ripped these down to make them a little bit thinner because we don't want a big heavy drawer front on the front. of the table. So let's see how that works out. Okay, after one coat of stain and a few coats of clear finish, this job's about wrapped up. I'm really glad that I put that false drawer front on there. That allowed me to put that knob on there. I think that hardware really adds a little something to it. Not bad for a job made out of mostly scraps and some 2x4s I bought. So, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.